For over 60 years, Eagle Communications has been the leader in value and service. And over that time, our specialized teams have been helping businesses grow because Eagle is your one-stop for business solutions. We can provide the latest in hosted phone, reliable fiber internet, IT support, business compliance, and network planning. Plus, we offer affordable advertising on television, radio, and digital platforms. Call our employee owners today and let us serve you. Eagle Communications, our community connected.
Eagle Community Television presents Community Connection with your host, Mike Cooper.
Hello and welcome again to Community Connection from Eagle Community Television. Thanks for watching. Thanks as always to the producer and editor of our series, Brandon Cooley. We're in the studios of Eagle Community Television with a National Science Foundation grant recipient for Fort Hays State University and a grassland ecology and rangeland management specialist, professor of biological sciences at Fort Hays State University, Dr. Mitch Greer, assistant professor of biology sciences. Mitch, that biological sciences area, particularly in rangeland management and grasslands, I'm sure you've learned, has a long history going back to Dr. Gerald Tomanek.
Yeah, I'm going to say I didn't realize that until I went to the national meeting of the Society of Rangeland Management. Last year I bumped into a gentleman who found out I was from Fort Hays State and gave me a brief history of, the importance of Fort Hays in that field. So,
the National Science Foundation grant to Kansas through the foundation's established program to stimulate competitive research, which is designed, said the news release, to build research and development capability in states that demonstrate a commitment to research, but have thus far lacked the levels of investment, meaning money, that are seen in other parts of the country. This project awarded Fort Hays State $273,000 over 5 years from the National Science Foundation, and will also involve a couple of graduate students in that research. Talk about the project, would you, Mitch?
So, the world is controlled basically, and to some degree, by microbes. I mean, one of the best ways of thinking about it is your gut bacteria. You have a whole collection of different bacteria within your gut that are beneficial to your system and helping you digest food and uptake nutrients. Well, the ecological systems or the environment is much the same, controlled by a lot of the microbiomes that are out there. And specifically what we're looking at is the plant microbiome, so the bacteria and the fungi species associated with the plant community, the soil community, and then the aquatic community. And that's where the MAPS title of the project comes from, microbiome, aquatic, plant, soil. And we want to see what some of the functional roles are by testing for certain genes within these individuals to try to determine exactly what are they doing in the environment, and then overall how they are connected from one to another. So how does the plant influence the soil microbial community? And then how does the soil microbial community influence the aquatic community? So,
and much like in our body, these microbes determine results of that species, don't they?
Correct. So the soil and the plants, which I'm most familiar with, are intrinsically linked, and the plant can actually influence what microbes are below and that will turn around and influence the plant community. So we can see that they can actually benefit themselves, or they could change the microbial community in a way that might actually hinder other species from being able to establish in an area as well.
So plants and soil have a symbiotic relationship as well.
Definitely a symbiotic relationship for most, but there's also, microbes that are non-beneficial, those that are parasitic or could increase competition for nutrients or resources as well. So a lot of different players in the game, each one of them having a different role, and that's kind of what we're looking to determine is what the roles of these individuals may be.
And this is going to involve a project that has what kind of a timeline, Mitch?
We're looking at a project that the official start was September 1st, and then we'll be going for the next 5 years basically. So I'm hoping to bring in a graduate student My first of the two starting this spring that will work for about 2 to 2.5 years, and then start one semester of having my second graduate student overlap with this first so that they can kind of get each other up to speed. So.
And this is going to bring Fort Hays State a grant of $273,000 from the National Science Foundation.
Correct. The money used to support those two graduate students, travel money to make sure the students are going to some of these national meetings, presenting some of the results and findings, and then also supply monies for being able to travel to and from field sites and also collect the samples that we need.
How do you find those students? What do you look for in the student who would be one of the main directors of this project, Dr. Greer?
We advertise in multiple different places. I mean, word of mouth from current graduate students that may have friends back home that are interested in certain areas. I will send announcements to different job list boards. There's a big one at Texas A&M. There's a big one called Ecolog, and again, we'll send them out, kind of a national search to try to find the best and the brightest and bring them to Fort Hays State. Even international students, may apply at times. And I'll go through their materials, and what I'm looking for is someone that has an appreciation for plants and soils, has done some type of work with those, and then hopefully some that have done a little bit of genetics work on those, because that's where my expertise lacks a little bit, and we'll be relying on some of our partners from across the state to help us with the genetic analysis of the microbial communities.
Will there be published results of this research study?
Yes, I mean, one of the things National Science Foundation looks for is actually to see these publications. They don't have a set number that are required, but we're looking at putting out a fair number of publications between all the different individual groups, the aquatic, the plant, the soil, but then also some overarching research as well that kind of links these three different systems together. And we're actually looking to get a class initiated through K-State, Fort Hays State, and KU that would allow students to kind of do a literature review, find out what information is currently out there on this topic, and synthesize it all together that they hopefully will have out in the first year.
And since, as I mentioned, neither Brandon nor I have any research background, do you go into a project like this, Dr. Greer, with a preconceived idea of what you might find or what the results might be or what you're hoping for? Or is it a clean slate? Do you start with just tell me something different?
So it's a little bit of both. We always say it depends is like the number one answer in biological sciences. You go in with having done a literature review or previous research, you have some idea, an observation you've made that may lead you to a hypothesis, kind of, a statement that you think possible results that could happen. You don't know what those results specifically are going to be until you conduct that experiment, but it's not going out there with just a completely clean slate. So.
I've heard Dr. Greg Farley, as a matter of fact, mention that it depends on numerous occasions, I think. The value of the project to National Science Foundation, to Fort Hays State, and of course, obviously, to the students who will be involved.
So it's going to be a large project. I mean, they give the National Science Foundation gives away 5 of these awards this past year. I think Alabama or Georgia got one, and then some schools out east. A few years ago, Wyoming got one, and Nebraska got one. But again, it's going to link together 5 universities within the state of Kansas, KU, K-State, Fort Hays State, Wichita State, then Haskell Indian Nations University, and allow us to kind of put some a lot of individuals working together. And some of those at K-State and KU, professors that are well established in their field, they're going to help benefit professors like me and other just assistant professors at K-State and KU, kind of get their momentum going as far as their research program. So overall, it's benefiting us younger professors as well. It's going to help benefit the overall field of science. By understanding these systems, we can maybe ultimately understand agricultural systems. Part of the project does relate to the agricultural systems and native prairie, but being able to see what we can do to try to maintain the health of these systems, to make sure we can maintain, maximize food production on the field without expanding into new areas, so leaving some of that native habitat around. to Fort Hays State, I mean, it'll help again continue that tradition of research and those hopefully big names, you know, and importance in the field down the road. And to the students, they're going to get to work with some really well-known scientists across the state, you know, and that are high ups in their fields from K-State and KU. And the project, again, will involve so many people that it'll be an overall really good experience, lots of publications and learning different techniques. The students will learn multiple different techniques as well for analyzing data and looking at systems in a field that's kind of cutting edge. You know, we're just breaking into this DNA sequencing and turning the genomes of things, so it's cutting edge research. So.
Well, and to maintain the health of the prairie ecosystem is vitally important to sustaining all kinds of life, whether it's agricultural, whether it's food production, whether it's people, whether it's animals.
Very true. I mean, a lot of my previous research has looked at some of these non-native grasses and the problems that they're causing as they take over the prairie, not just to the small mammal community, but they alter the soil microbial community, which would be a concern for if you tried to restore that habitat back to the native grasslands that are there. But again, as you start to pick apart individual pieces of the system and change them, you're going to ultimately change everything within that system.
And that has to be a concern because of the population basically is interwoven, whether it's the small animals that inhabit the prairie, whether it's the animals that feed on the grasses, or whether it's us involved in that ecosystem as well.
Very true. One of the famous quotes by Aldo Leopold, one of the first ecologists kind of out there, one who viewed nature, I think, far different than many people do, is that it states something along the lines that you soon find out as you pull on one thing in nature, it's tied to everything else. So again, yeah, that interconnectedness is definitely important, but again, as you change one piece, you change all the other pieces involved.
What was your early influence, Dr. Greer, in education, in biological sciences, particularly in grassland studies and such? Did you have some influences that drove you in that direction?
So I grew up in the Black Hills of South Dakota, hunting, fishing, mountain biking, and that's ultimately what drove me into the biological sciences. I always had a passion for teaching, but decided to go down the wildlife biologist, and then luckily chose to go on for a master's degree at South Dakota State and got a chance to do a little bit of teaching there in the biology labs. And when I found out that I could put those two passions together, that's ultimately what pushed me into the Ph.D. and wanting to teach, you know, the biological sciences to the next generation of wildlife biologists.
And you got your Ph.D. at Oklahoma State,
At
I
Oklahoma
believe, right?
State. And I had two great advisors down there that really did a good job of showing me, you know, the benefits of incorporating undergraduate students into these larger research projects, helping out and assisting the graduate students and me in our research so they get those hands-on practical skills as well. So,
but in those early days of your developing this career in education and in ecology studies, biological studies, the outdoors appealed to you, and I think that's something that we need to keep connection with, don't we?
We do. It's unfortunate. You look at some of the statistics of the number of hunters and, you know, people that fish and the number of people that just go to national parks, how they tend to continually decline from year to year. It's an unfortunate trend, and hopefully we can start to see a reversal in that and see people getting back to the outdoors a little bit more. It's important to keep in touch with them, but then, you know, not only for our health, but to keep the ecosystem itself healthy as well.
And you had some attractions to Fort Hays State too, I believe, now in your fourth year, I believe?
Fourth year at Fort Hays State, and one of my co-advisors at Oklahoma State during my PhD actually taught here for a few years a while back, and you know, forwarded the job announcement to me, and I'm glad she did, because I really enjoy working in the biological sciences department here at the university.
Well, this research project, again, to go back to it just briefly in our final moment or two, if we could, Dr. Greer, because Fort Hays is involved, you'll be looking at western Kansas primarily, I assume, which will be a totally different result than, say, eastern Kansas at K-State or KU or Wichita State in the South Central, right?
So our part of the project is actually looking at these soil all of these microbiomes across an ecological gradient from west to east as we go across an increasing precipitation gradient, but then also a agricultural gradient from pristine prairie that has had little influence from agriculture to all agricultural fields. So the overall larger collaborative project will actually be looking at sites in all of these areas and comparing them.
I know one of the areas that you're particularly interested in is invasive grass species, your research in that. So you're going to have to come back and talk to us at length about that, would you?
I would definitely be happy to come back and talk about that. So
the grant from the National Science Foundation, by the way, the total grant on that was $20 million, including those 5 involved universities and areas of study. The grant for Fort Hays State, $273,000. Thanks to the work of Assistant Professor of Biological Sciences at Fort Hays State, Dr. Mitch Greer, our Community Connection.
My name is Jeremy Burkholder and I manage the Network Operations Center at Eagle Communications. My job at the Network Operations Center is ensuring that we've got the right members of the Eagle team involved in supporting our customers, resolving their issues, and making sure we meet their needs long term. Service to me is understanding my customers' needs and ensuring that we're meeting them, as well as ensuring they have a reliable product on a day-to-day basis. The favorite part of my job is when I get the opportunity to work with the great team we have at Eagle to exceed the customer's expectations and showing them what an employee-owned company can do.
Eagle Communications is your complete business solution with options to fit any budget. We provide business class phone with customizable features and fast, reliable internet. Your knowledgeable team at Technology Solutions has a broad base of IT services to meet your needs. Let the experts at Marketing Solutions get your message to the right people on the best platforms. Eagle Communications will build your personalized business plan. Call us at 877-61-EAGLE.
Welcome back to our Community Connection, and thanks again to our editor and producer Brandon Cooley from Eagle Community Television. And we're in the studios with the Dean of Forsyth Library, Dean Deb Ludwig, as Forsyth Library celebrated its 50th anniversary during homecoming weekend. And Dean Ludwig, first I have to ask you, the people who attended that 50th anniversary and saw the tour and had the cookies and the refreshments and such, what kind of comments did you hear about Forsyth?
Well, I actually heard two comments. It was a lot of fun, let me just say, too, because 1967, of course, was their graduation year, and so they were the last students who were users of the older library on campus, and so they were there as Forsyth, the new Forsyth, was being built, and many of them said, oh, you know, this looks a lot like it did when I was here before. So there are a lot of elements of the building, including some of the furniture that are still the same. But I think overall they noticed how technology has changed things, how we have a lot more space for students to come in and work together collaboratively, and to find quiet nooks as well. And so it was just fun. The thing that people tend to remember more than the building are the people who helped them. Mack Read, of course, was one of those people who was just essential in helping people get through their research projects and be successful.
And now you've kind of commemorated Mack's work there with a beautiful portrait that was done by Fort Hays State art professor Joel Dugan.
We were so excited about that, and of course Steve Shields was the force behind that happening. And Mack, I don't know if you knew Mack Read. I was very privileged to first meet Mack Read in 1988 when I came to Fort Hays State University, and I had just graduated from my master's program in library science, and Mack was really a superstar. I mean, he was very involved at the state level in government documents, documents collections, and helping people use government information, but he was also well known at a national level. And so for me, it was really a good mentorship, seeing somebody who was quite a role model. But again, the thing that came out when we had people in for the 50th birthday party was how they remembered him as a great reference librarian and somebody who helped them. So it was really an honor to be able to do that for Mack.
You mentioned something too that I thought was interesting about the library, that its current location is kind of a culmination of several moves on campus. The library, Forsyth, has been in several locations, hasn't it?
It has. We actually started in the old Fort Hospital, so that was the first library. We've been in Picken, we've been in Martin Allen. I believe it was 1926 when they built the first Forsyth Library, and Sternberg Museum was on the first floor, and then the library took up the second floor. That building is now McCartney, and in 1967, then when they finished current Forsyth, we moved again. Very interesting because they actually had to take books out of the windows, through the windows, to get them out of McCartney and into new Forsyth. So it was a big project to get moved.
You mentioned adapting to the learning and research needs of Fort Hays State as a mission, I guess, of Forsyth Library, including transforming spaces and incorporating new technologies. Talk about that, Dean Ludwig.
Let me start with the technologies, because I think that's been one of the biggest changes in libraries. And I came to Fort Hays the first time in 1988, and my job was to work on a grant project to bring in TopCat, the library's first automated system. So libraries were very invested in that. In the 90s, we had the internet and the growth of CD-ROMs, and really in the 2000 era, then we've seen the domination, frankly, of internet-based publishing, online publishing, journals that were previously only in print moving to electronic, and then the growth of electronic books. So what that has done has really paralleled, I think, the way Fort Hays has expanded through both our international partnerships and our virtual partnerships. And so today, for example, we have about 500,000 physical items in the library, and that's down from probably about 700,000 items 20 years ago. But now we have, I think it's about 280,000 electronic books, and most of our major journals are online as well. So whether you're a student on campus or whether you're a student in China, or whether you're a student in Dodge City at your computer at your home, you can get to the library and use the library. So that's the big change. That has an effect as well on the facilities. We're more focused on students coming in, having spaces to collaborate, to work together. One of the things that I noticed when I first came in 2014 was I didn't see as many students physically in the library as I hoped to see. We started walking around every hour and just looking and measuring where are students, and we could see that a lot of them were actually using the library, but they were finding those quiet spaces, you know, out of the way. But we're seeing more students now coming in to work together, and I had a faculty member a couple of weeks ago who emailed me and said, I've been here at Fort Hays for 16 years, and I have seen more students this fall in the library than I've ever seen before. And that's kind of how we're feeling as well, that traffic has picked up and that we're not alone.
Well, obviously you are attracting them with the features and the amenities of the library, including, of course, the wealth of information that's still there.
The wealth of information, and also, I will say, just a really welcoming staff. I think we have an incredible staff of librarians. They're very concerned about helping students use technology, helping students distinguish good information from bad information, doing that not only in the library but in the classroom as well, reaching out and working with our faculty.
One thing you responded to that the students felt was a need were leisure books at the library, right, Dean Ludwig?
It was. I was really surprised in 2014, my first year back in Hays. A student said to me, where are your books? I said, well, they're upstairs on the second floor. And they said, no, I mean the books that are fun to read. I thought, oh, well, they're all fun to read, of course. But,
of course.
But, we've just seen a real desire for students to want to read. And I'm surprised because a lot of students tell us, I like a physical book. And that's not what we think of with young people.
Yeah.
We think technology, but they're interested in that, and it gets used well.
Well, and there are still some of the traditional features. Some of the carols are still there, and some of the journals and such as that you mentioned, but also some of the new things too that have attracted those students in record numbers, I guess.
We have some new little study pods up on the second floor that are really a lot of fun for students. They're certainly close together, but they're electrified. They have a little barrier around them, or a little, what am I trying to say? They wrap you really in your own environment. They have a light, they have a little footstool, a little desk that adjusts for you. They're just a lot of fun, and the students really are enjoying those.
So traditionally at the library, your change has been a service approach. You really still want to maintain that service, don't you?
You still want to maintain service. The shape of that service has certainly changed. For example, you used to walk into a library and there would be what was called a reference desk, and there would be a librarian there. And at Fort Hays and at many libraries, we've discontinued that practice and tried to find ways to be more where the students are and where they're working. And so we've done several things physically on campus. We've sometimes had office hours in another building, Rarick, for example, last year during finals. But we also have moved to more of an on-call model. So we always have a librarian on call until 9 o'clock in the evening during the week, and on the weekend as well. And you can call us on a mobile phone, you can text us, we have an online chat system, so you can go online and just chat with a librarian and ask your questions. That chat converts to email when we're not there, so we'll get your question in the morning. So we're sort of everywhere.
And even that, the physical library itself is open for a lot of hours for students' benefit.
It is. We're open on Sundays until midnight. We're open Monday through Thursday till midnight. Monday through Thursday we also open at 7:30 to help students get in and do a little research or print a paper or whatever they need to do. Open on Friday until about 6 o'clock, I believe, and then on Saturday as well. So a lot of hours, over 90 hours a week.
One thing I'd like for you to talk about, if you would, Dean Ludwig, is the open textbooks program through a grant at Fort Hays State. Talk about that a little bit.
Sure. One of the things that we know is a real burden for students is the cost of commercial textbooks. We were very lucky. Dolores and Richard Fishley gave us some funding to initiate a grant program for faculty who want to either adapt an existing open textbook for their class or to create new materials. And so we have been doing that now for a couple of years, and our first OER materials went online for one of our classes this fall. And so we will take applications for faculty. We have a committee that screens those, and the hope is really to start infusing those basic classes with more resources that students can simply download and use and not have to spend money on commercial textbooks.
And yet readily available.
Absolutely.
There's another area too that I guess is new to the library, and that's the Fort Hays State football history from 1922 to 2002 as a digital resource.
Have you had a chance to look at that?
Haven't seen it yet.
It's really fun, so I hope people will go out and take a look at that. We have the football programs that are out there. We have a few football films that have been digitized as well. We also have other online resources. We have a new digital curation librarian, Elizabeth Chance, who's really jumped in and making a difference. So You can go out and listen to oral histories, for example, about one-room schoolhouses from our digital collections.
wow.
You can see Dr. Tim Johnson, who's from Wichita, has given us a number of materials about the history of Kansas, so you can go out and look at those. The Reveilles are very popular. The Reveilles are all online, so that's a big area for us, making sure that we not only digitize, but we have a plan to preserve the history of the region and of the university.
We have a couple of minutes left, Dean Ludwig. I wanted you to address information services. Are we in danger of information overload? I know as a librarian you might think, no way, but talk about that a bit, would you?
I think it's a real problem. We've always had information overload, but with technology as the carrier driving it toward us, it becomes much more complicated. And I think we saw some of that with the fake news too. What is real, what is not real, so much information coming in. And I think that's where information literacy has become a real important part of our profession, helping students know, how do I winnow through, how do I find and use good information. But that's also the value of a library versus Google. You know, Google gives you everything and you don't know what is good. In a library, we've really researched those resources that we're bringing in. We're subscribing to them. They're from credible sources. They're designed to give both sides of a issue as well. So to be broad and to be encompassing of a lot of viewpoints, but also to represent the best of information.
Those young people who are thinking about library science as a career, that filter is going to be very important to be able to winnow, as you said, Dean Ludwig, facts from fake.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, I think let me diverge just a minute and say I think librarianship is a great profession, and it's more important perhaps than ever, just as you brought out the fact that there is so much information, and helping students be good users of that information, to consume wisely and to apply it in ways that are credible and advance their own learning is critical.
50 years at Fort Hays State University. And we're certainly hoping for another 50 at least with our guest today. The 50th anniversary of Forsyth Library with Dean Deb Ludwig, our community connection.
Eagle Communications is the leader in advertising services. We take the guesswork out of marketing your business. From creating the message to managing the campaign, Eagle can make your business stand out. Meet customers where they shop. Take your business online with a digital campaign and showcase your products on TV and radio.
Let me help you reach the people that matter most by targeting demographics and using platforms that are proven to make your business grow. Call today. Eagle Communications, our community connected.